Hello there, and welcome to the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny. I'm Johnny.
There's nothing to interrupt there that's worth interrupting because it's just such a beige kind of shouty voice man person. There's nothing to pick on.
Shouty? What world is that shouty?
Just radio voice. It was a regular radio voice, and there was nothing that I could go, You're doing that accent. You're doing that thing. You're doing whatever. So I'm just interrupting for the sake of interrupting.
I tend to try to do accents because
you just sort of stumble into it.
It just happens, yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like if you try and do accents, you're on a road to insulting somebody.
Well, exactly. So. And we've pretty much insulted everybody now.
I know.
Yeah, and I'm Callum.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. It's a shame.
It's a shame. I was hoping Dog Brain to be here instead.
You keep saying that. Keep threatening it. It never happens.
Well, we'll see. We shall see. Yeah. Welcome back to another normal edition after our special edition last week of the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny.
Last week we were jetting off in the world, or he was, and now we're back and ready to go.
We are indeed, and then we're not back for very long, and then we'll be off, both of us.
Yes,
to the other side of the world, but that is another story. So you may be getting a nice little podcast from Asia.
That would be fun.
In the distant future.
Make sure to watch some films on the plane to make sure that we've got something to watch.
What to talk about, yeah, absolutely. But Callum, if people want to watch our adventures in Asia, I suspect we might post a couple of photos.
I'm sure we will.
If we find something interesting. What kind of places might they find that stuff?
Well, on Facebook and Instagram, you can go to Untitled Film Podcast, or one word. And on YouTube, we post our episodes there as well for the people who haven't got with the podcasting revolution. Hello, Mum. And we ask questions. And this week I asked, what's your go-to spooky season Halloween movie? If you only had to pick one, we did get an answer from Dog Brain Videos. All he said was anything with zombies, which is really helpful when I asked for one movie. But anyway.
Do you think you like zombies?
I think he must do.
Fair enough. What about you? What's your go-to?
The Thing. I think it's my favourite horror movie, and I think it's the only, as much as I love horror movies, I think it's the only one in my sort of properly in my top 10, but it's just a perfect movie.
Okay. I think it's quite hard because I'm not that big on horror movies in a way, so it's either something quite left field, but if I'm going to go kind of more like straight horror, The Shining, although that's still not that horror-y. I do like the first kind of like Dawn of the Dead and stuff as well.
He calls them low art.
They are low art. It's them, then comedy, then everything else.
Oh my God. You and the Academy.
They're just like 2 steps below pornography.
Below pornography?
Yeah. They're basically pornography for people that haven't had sex.
Oh my God. I think the last person is just shut off the podcast, never to return.
No, I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, I think the thing with horror movies is there's every year there's 1 or 2 really good ones come along, like you Get Outs and things, and then there's a lot of real like generic remakes and a lot of really low budget, not great films that just rely on jump scares and things. Not everything can be Alfred Hitchcock.
True.
But anyway, we digress. But I think we probably will be doing a horror episode in the not too distant future, I suspect.
We'll try to do one just as Halloween is come and gone.
Halloween! It's not been yet.
By the time this episode has come out, it will have. And by the time we review it, it'll probably be November.
Technically, you could say that one of the movies we're watching today is kind of a horror movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if next week it will be a horror movie. You might just have a slight late horror movie episode. Spooky Halloween episode.
We do like our horror voices.
Ooh, I was working in the podcast studio late one night.
He did the MASH.
He watched the Monster Mash, even though that's not a film. Anyway, on another story. Speaking of stories, let's go to the news, Callum.
Well, speaking of low budget, relying on jump scares, not very good horror films, we've got some box office news.
I know you're going to talk about
Five Nights at Freddy's has done really, really well, both in the US and internationally.
It's like $130 million a week.
It's $130 million, and the split is 52 in the rest of the world, including the UK, and 78 here. Over in the United States of America.
But it's had I was kind of excited for it, but it's had very, very tepid reviews.
Very tepid reviews, but also a day and date release with Peacock. So you can watch it right now on Peacock, but it's still done exceptionally well. Usually that cuts the legs out, but it's not.
Which I kind of think goes to show if you create experience cinema, people will still go and see it. I think Killer of the Moonflower's done okay at the box office, which considering it's going straight onto
45 million worldwide and straight onto Apple as well, yeah.
Which considering it's a difficult movie and anyone can pretty much pay £5 to watch it for free, or if they have Apple even better, watch it straight away. I feel like that's quite impressive. I don't think The Irishman did those numbers, so it's still possible to create a bit of a moment. But it's up to the marketeers to do a better job. And I think it goes to show as well, it doesn't have to be good, because obviously like Barbie and Oppenheimer's having a moment, they were both good movies, good to great. So fair enough, they had good legs, they were going to do well. Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't even seem like it's meant to be that good. So yeah, it's still.
I do like that Josh Hutcherson, who hasn't had a hit movie since the last Hunger Games, is in this as the star, and it's kind of like it's one of those things of I like him. I'm glad he's got a hit under his name.
Fair enough. My first piece of news this week is they've shockingly having a third go at a very popular book, making it into a TV show. Any ideas what that popular book could be?
Third go.
Third go. They're making it into TV series this time. They've made it into 2 movies previously.
Well, it can't be Harry Potter because this is only its second go.
Yep.
No, I'm not. I'm drawing a blank.
It is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, really? Nice.
Because everybody knows that a lot of people really go in for the Swedish ones, which was actually a TV series originally, I suppose.
Yes.
That was then made into movies. I never quite sat quite right with me, that one. I thought the ages of the characters were all wrong and stuff. Then I really liked the David Fincher one. Shocking, because I love David Fincher. that they did in the US. But obviously then they spent too much money on it. It didn't make enough money back. And then they made a really tepid kind of recast.
Yes, they did. With Claire Foy.
Yeah, with Claire Foy, which I haven't seen, but I've not heard good things about. But now Amazon are making it into a TV series. I don't really know if it needs another stab.
Probably not, but it's an IP, and that's all people care about.
I kind of wish they'd go back to David Fincher and say, can you just not make the next 2, make them back to back and make them for like a reasonable sum of money?
Maybe make 2 for the price that he did the first one for. And if you wrap it into the same production as Peter Jackson and James Cameron you save some money down the road because you're using a lot of the same tools to make a very big production.
And you haven't got to get the actors' schedules sorted twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, maybe don't do 90 takes, David.
Yeah.
For someone
you
eating a burger.
You can never get him to do anything fewer than 90.
Yeah. Although, interestingly enough, he is also now saying that he's considering a Social Network too, although he says it could open a can of worms.
Yeah, I did see that.
So, yeah, strange goings on. Anyway, your second piece of news, Callum.
Well, they're trying to have another go at the Highlander franchise, but this time with Henry Cavill in the leading role and Chad Stahelski, who's the director, I think, of the majority of the John Wick films. I think maybe the first one, and then he did it branched out and a few other people took over. Lionsgate's going to be doing it, but they're taking it to the American film market because Lionsgate, I think they're reluctant because they're not the biggest studio. They're reluctant to put up a $100 million plus budget. So I think they'll distribute it and probably put up like 30 or 40, but with the idea that they can scrounge up the other 60 from various other production companies.
And funds and things.
And if they get them from various countries, then that sort of creates inroads between making your money back through pre-sales and things like that. Henry Cavill as the Highlander, I was going to say I'm not sure if he can do a Scottish accent, but then again, neither could the Frenchman who played it before, who actually didn't know English. I forget his name now. And you had a Scottish person in that movie, Sean Connery, playing a Spaniard. That movie is bonkers, but it's got a great Queen soundtrack.
Well, great, and Queen. You be the debate that.
Oh, you're not the biggest.
I like Queen songs, but I don't know if
I think in a way they're good for movies because they have the pomp and ceremony. So like Flash.
I think they're just, for me, they're a live band. They're not a band and they're quite kind of, well, they're not necessarily prog. They're kind of quite, I don't know, bombastic stadium music.
Yeah.
And I think they work for films, but I don't always want to listen to them. So bits of them I like.
I'd be curious to see if they'll try to get any of the Queen soundtrack from the first film and get a cover or just put it in again. But interested to see how that will work.
Fair enough. We bought the news a few weeks ago that the writer's strike was over. Yay! Hollywood getting back to normal. Because the SAG-AFTRA strike still is dragging on.
Yep.
So the actors are still arguing away with the studios. The studios are saying that they've got as far as they can go and they won't budge. And the actors are saying it's not enough. So they paused their discussions on Friday. So this long-running saga does not look like it's
not going to end anytime soon.
I can just imagine like them getting towards the end of it, and then the directors going, "Well, hang on, we're worried about AI too. What if you just get a computer to edit and direct it all for me?"
Opening a huge thing, a huge kind of sea change is happening. I think so. People are realizing, wait a minute, I'm worth more than that. And then other people who are reluctant to join can look at the success of the writers or just how long these actors are holding out, and many of them will have to kind of. They won't be able to work, so they'll have the mega rich ones. Except for the mega rich ones, they'll have to kind of choose other professions. But they're doing it because they know it's a greater good sacrifice later on down the line. It could be that I think the visual effects teams are thinking about striking next.
They probably more than anyone, both from a. I think immediately. I think having AI and like scanning actors and things down the line definitely is a problem, and obviously they've already done that in regards to actors before for like something like Gladiator, where they needed to like make
be a
bajillion people
there's
and stuff.
A crowd scene in the latest Disney Plus movie where they just look like robots.
But they, that's one thing. But actually, with special effects and things, you could see a world where you just type in, make this special effect, and it almost does it for you, and you just have to go and tweak it and stuff, and take a lot of those jobs away. Although, again, this is where, maybe there's a balance to be struck. When it comes to things like writing and acting, there's certainly when it's like main roles of acting and it's, writing the core of the script and things, I want a human there. I want that warmth.
Absolutely.
And I can't imagine a world where, not for 20 or 30 years, where a computer could replicate that. Anyone who's used ChatGPT, which I've realised, obviously, there'll be 5 will come out and that'll be infinitely better, and 6 will come out. But it's very inhuman. And I don't think it would have that kind of, until someone's done something, it's not going to have that kind of like sparkle of magic on it. But actually, when it comes to something like CGI, where there is a lot of artistry involved, but actually the boring bit is doing all the bits in between the artistry.
Yes.
It could be something where actually there's not enough people who work in special effects in Hollywood. There's a real shortage of them, and because of that they're massively overworked. So it could be a way to fill in some of the gaps.
It certainly could be, and I imagine that's what if they do go on strike, will be the terms of contract negotiations of what they can use AI for. Because I'm sure they've thought of these things too, and know that I think a lot of AI was brought in for the Spider-Verse film. For little bits like putting the kind of the comic book lines on people and stuff. So I think if they...
it makes sense now to go and do every single shot.
So I'm sure they're figuring out a way where they can use it, but under their own terms rather than under the studio's terms.
Yeah. But anyway, TBC, things are still not moving. So good luck to...
Going to run out of things to review.
Yeah, well, quite.
Except for English films, because that's not the guilds. And other countries. We'll start to do foreign films, I
mean, excitingly, now that James Corden's coming back to the UK, maybe we can get lesbian vampire killers too.
Oh, no.
Get the British film industry going.
What fresh hell is this?
Anyway. That is the news for the week. So, Callum, what are we going to talk about for the main meat of this podcast.
Well, it's interesting we're talking about animation because we've got 2 Seth Rogen produced and at least co-written animated films. Firstly, we've got the new film Teenage Mutant Ninja Mutant Mayhem, I think is the full title. And then we got the film that he made back in, I think it's 2013, Sausage Party.
Mm-hmm. Was it 13? I thought it was a bit later than that. I thought it was 15.
Now that you say that, I think it might be. It might even be 16. It is 2016.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. 2 Seth Rogen movies. TMNT, Mutant Madness. Mayhem, sorry. Who wants to go ahead and...
I can take it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so it's a pretty well-established story.
Heroes in a half shell.
Turtle power. 4 turtles sprayed or bathed in some sort of mutant-making ooze by a mad scientist type. They go down into the sewer. They escape into the sewer where they're raised by Master Splinter, who is a mutated rat. But like every Disney princess, they want to be part of your world. And so they keep on breaking out and trying to make friends with people up above, trying to do all the human things without getting seen until they're seen by April O'Neil, a teenage... She wants to be a journalist, but she's having problems coming over her nervousness in a very gross scene in front of the camera. And together they try to break down a crime syndicate that has some inroads into this whole mutated thing, because the biggest of all the bad mutants part of that crime syndicate is Superfly, played by Ice Cube. So Johnny, what did you think of TMNT, Mutant Mayhem?
Yeah, not bad.
Never gets old.
Actually, I changed it up.
Yeah, slightly.
No, I really, really, really like it. I'm kind of agnostic when it comes to TMNT. Like, I watched it a bit as a kid, but it was never like, I was never like, this is the best thing ever, like a lot of my friends and stuff were. And I think the original cartoons were fairly vapid, should we say? They're a bit like Power Rangers, where there's a premise that they're like, how can we get like cool kind of kung fu or cool kind of robots fighting and stuff into a thing, and the dialogue was very secondary, and the voice acting is very stilted and cheesy, and they just basically went, people in the 90s like pizza,
yes,
and people in the 90s like skateboarding and cool karate and stuff, and they just made a thing based on that.
It was where the word extremist, but with 3 X's.
Yeah, exactly. It's very kind of early 90s. And then there's been different versions through time, and it's either got better and worse. They've kind of, like the early ones, there was none of this existential crisis involved, to put it that way. And then they kind of, but they were teenagers, and then they kind of made them older when they went to the horrible Michael Bay movies. Like Michael Bay did these terrible CGI ones, if anyone hasn't seen them, where they all look like avocados, and they're like massive, and they like hench, and I'm pretty sure they're like meant to be like 25 instead of like 15 or 14 as they're probably meant to be. And this is kind of like TMNT back to its roots, but actually with character development and good voice acting, and it's really well put together. Animation-wise, it's obviously taken a lot of inspiration from Spider-Verse, but it kind of or Mitchell's versus the Machine, but it does still kind of feel very much like its own thing. So although it's got that kind of like strange, scrappy animation style, which seems to be very much in vogue at the minute, the character design's very unique, I think, and the background art is brilliant. I really like how it looks. I think for something that's a bit strange and gross at times, it manages to do that in kind of a cutesy but not too cutesy kind of way. I think that all works incredibly well. The antagonist is good, and his crew is very funny. And again, it takes enough kind of fun bits from the original show, and enough that it hasn't kind of like used up all the lore in the first one, so you can see there being 2 or 3 of these movies quite easily. There's one storyline in it, if I had to pick a big criticism, which kind of doesn't go anywhere, and I feel like is setting up for a second movie, and it is maybe a bit pointless, and the character's like the worst character in it by far. But outside of that, yeah, really, really works. Really like the voice cast. All the kids they've used, they've actually used kids for once, and they got them to riff with each other to make some of the dialogue, which works really well. Jackie Chan as Splinter's really good. Even just like really random things like Paul Rudd playing I can't remember what the gecko's called, but this like gecko characters, it's quite funny. They've got to go. Just like funny. It's just silly and funny. So yeah, no, overall really, really liked it.
Yeah,
and a sick soundtrack as well. Both from the score, which is a Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross cut, which is always a bit of me, and also just all the really cool rap music and 90s music they used.
I don't know what else I can say, because I think you've said it all. But yeah, no, the animation is very wonderful. It has a quality that looks like it's been drawn hastily by teenagers with felt tip pens, and it's very flickery and scratchy. Yeah, as you say, it's really good fun. I was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, or as they were called here because of the video nasty scare, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. I was a big fan of those as a child. I used to watch the cartoons and buy all the toys, which makes me a bit more hypercritical when it comes to any turtle media, so I'm a bit harder to impress. Like, as annoyed as you were by the Michael Bay films, I was just absolutely fuming.
Incensed and enraged.
All that kind of, I wouldn't want to sit next to me in a cinema because it would just be kind of grumbling and groaning, going to the Angry Dome. So I was, even with the good trailers and everything else that I'd heard, it still managed to impress me, and that was a bit of a mountain to overcome. But yeah, as you say, the voice acting is really wonderful. I do really like the fact that they've got real teenagers to play and that they can riff together, because usually in animation you don't record your dialogue with another person. It's you in the booth talking, saying your lines to the director, who then will kind of bark directions in your ear. Little louder, please. Little quieter for that take, but in this one they just allowed them to go off. And I think you can tell that Seth Rogen and I think it's Evan Goldberg is his co-writer, they really have a enjoyment for this sort of thing. You can imagine them being teenagers in Canada watching the cartoons and really loving it. So it has a feel of a passion project. Superfly, Ice Cube, is really intimidating and
so well done.
And and the fact that they managed to sneak in an NWA line, his first line in the film is 6 a.m, police at my door. But that kind of thing can become obnoxious if it's overdone, and this didn't. Even the rap soundtrack, it seemed natural that they'd listen to kind of slightly remixed versions of 80s and 90s old school with a K rap tunes. So no, everything about this is really, really funny, and I like the animation. I wasn't overly keen on the long running joke about milking.
Well, that again feeds into the bad guy that I think is a pointless wasted storyline. That's the only reason I could see to have them in there, was to get make that come to fruition. But
that was the only thing I wasn't keen on. It just felt like, as gross as they were going with it and grotesque, it just felt like it slightly tripped over into ew sort of territory for me, but only slightly. And I know kids love ew, that's what kids like. They like bogies and farts and stuff. So I can see that playing very well with a group of 10-year-olds.
I didn't think it was so. I thought the payoff was almost worth it, but it's not the strongest. There's a couple of little bits like that weren't, but again, we're adults watching a film that is predominant. Although it's definitely got a all you people who grew up in the 90s who are now 30 with kids, you'll love this too. It definitely had that vibe about it, but obviously there is always going to be
who likes De La Soul. Kids everywhere.
What 7-year-old is well into De La Soul?
Yeah, no, exactly. You have to play two crowds with TMNT because it's built on nostalgia, but you're also trying to get young people into it.
Indeed. What's going on? There was something else I was going to say, and I forgot what it was. That's really good podcasting of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I had it on the tip of my tongue.
It did quite well money-wise in the US. It didn't seem to do gangbusters the rest of the world. I think the Turtles... I don't think it had
great marketing, and I think it was very close to Spider.
Yeah, first. It was. And
Barbenheimer
I just don't think the Turtles have ever had the kind of cachet here.
No.
Outside of their peak years in the 80s and 90s. I think it's a secondary franchise.
They are very American. It's like with... obviously The Simpsons were big here in the UK, but they weren't like they were in America, where they were an institution. And it's the same, there's quite a few of those shows that are just the biggest thing for 3 or 4 years.
Looking at your T-shirt, Snoopy and Peanuts.
Yeah, never translated.
Not quite.
The UK so much. But yeah, but it's still.
But these franchises, they live on video on demand. That's why Spider-Verse, the sequel, jumped up so rapidly in terms of money for its sequel. So if they did the same, I can imagine that happening again.
It was also quite cheap to make, I think. It was only like $30-40 million, which is quite fast. And apparently, Seth Rogen always created a studio from the ground up and made sure that everyone had a decent work week.
Yes, because for the film we're going to be talking about next, there was horrible treatment of their animators, and I don't think Seth Rogen was aware about it until it was too late. So this time he made sure that didn't happen. It's a Canadian studio, so he can keep it homegrown. It's in Montreal, which has a lot of animation studios. So it's a lot better treated, the animators here.
So no, really good. It's really bugging me. I had a really good point to make, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, I think I was going to say actually the ending was maybe a little bit kind of standard. It's kaiju. I'm not going to give too much away, but kind of kaiju vibes, and I feel like that's been done a lot recently.
Yeah, I think so. There was a joke in Guardians 3, go full kaiju. So I think it's a bit of a meme now.
But other than that, really good. Excellent. And I think that brings us up to an advertisement break.
I'd buy that for $1.
There was a stalemate there.
Yeah, standoff. If you saw it in the studio, our eyes locked like Clint Eastwood and in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Anyway, the next film we're going to talk about is also Seth Rogen co-written with Gold.
Yes.
With his same writing partner. Film Sausage Party. Sausage Party is about all of the foodstuffs that live in a grocery store. The main protagonist, who is spoken. I haven't got my phone for ages. That's because I need to touch the computer. Seth Rogen's character is the main protagonist, and he is a sausage in a pack who is waiting to be bought, probably on 4th of July, because it's the big 4th of July sale, and all hot dogs get bought on the 4th of July. And he is in love with a bun who is in a packet of buns that's next to him, and they can't wait to meet together for the first ever time. But something might come along and ruin that. A mustard goes out into the world, and all the little things in the store are told that when they leave the shop, they get to go to their nirvana and everything's great and everything that good that's ever happened in life happens, and it's an allegory for all different religions and things. But this mustard gets taken out of the store, and then it actually gets brought back because it's the wrong type of mustard. So it goes back on the shelf, and he's seen some shit. He was in Nam, boy, and he knows what really happens out there. And that starts to get filtered out to these characters, these cast of characters. And quote-unquote hilarity ensues. Callum, what did you think?
I'm glad you said quote-unquote, because it's really not very funny. It's a lot more interesting to talk about, to have an adult animation. That's been a thing on television for a long time, like Aqua Teen Hunger Force is probably the closest comparison, but then you have South Park, Family Guy, and everything like that. But in cinemas, this is a bit of a rarity that you get a traditionally animated CG cartoon. It looks with a celebrity voice cast, and you think, oh, okay, well, this...
it was like Fritz the Cat before, and then this, basically.
Exactly. So that's that in itself. And then you had cases of on the posters, warnings had to be put out this is not for children. Stop taking your children to see Sausage Party. So there were lots of things like that. Those are interesting. The movie is quite boring. I didn't like it that much. I've seen it twice now. I think I laughed only 2 or 3 times. They were pretty good laughs, but the voice cast is energetic, as you would expect from Seth Rogen, Michael Cera, Nick Kroll as the villain, Kristen Wiig, whole bunch of, Paul Rudd, a whole bunch of comedy talent, but it's just not very funny, and it's not nearly, I think it thinks it's very progressive and pushing the boat out, and whoa, we're getting away with some weird shit in this cartoon. But then it's like, but it's the same stuff that Seth Rogen and you lot, the American comedy crowd, swearing and shouting and talking about sex a lot, except with a really clumsy and shoehorned in religious allegory,
so
kind of just rammed in there.
And with what's going on in the world at the minute,
Exactly.
also a bit like, oof.
Yeah, because there's a character that's a bagel, it's Jewish, and I can't remember
It's like a falafel wrap.
a falafel wrapper to some type of Middle Eastern. They keep arguing, and it's
talking
like
about land being taken from each other.
yes, and there's like a box of grits that's voiced by Craig Robinson, who's supposed to be black. Firewater, the Native American,
who's voiced by Bill Hader, which is also slightly problematic. He also does a tequila. He also does tequila and does a Mexican accent. It's like,
and there's lots of jokes about the crackers took over our aisle, and
clumsy allegory.
It's not very funny, but it's over quickly. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes. And I quite liked the climax where they just go full kill rampage. I think that was quite funny, because like there's a moment where they're celebrating. It's a bit of a spoiler, but...
Well, it's the second film, you're allowed to spoil.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all celebrating and kind of high-fiving and say, we saved the day. And in the background, you just see dead humans in the freezers. I thought, that's funny. That's the kind of thing that would really push the boat out. Just not nearly enough of this. No, it's not very good, unfortunately.
I tend to agree. I funnily enough, similar to you, when it first came out, people were quite excited about it. Like, and it actually, I didn't get great reviews, but it was like 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5s and things. And I never got around to seeing it at the time. I know a few people that went and saw it and had a bit of the old Seth Rogen green before they went in, and they found it hilarious.
The devil's lettuce,
devil's lettuce. And I think that's maybe the issue. I think it's a 20-minute sketch that's been pulled out into an hour and 20 minutes movie by people that smoke too much weed.
Yes.
And I think that's the issue. And I think they've got stoned. They've come up with a good idea. And let's be honest, it's Seth Rogen, so they probably did get stoned. Like it's
absolutely.
Not like it's people going, oh, animators, they all must be on drugs. Actually, animation's really hard. No, it's Seth Rogen. He definitely probably just smoked some weed. And then they come up with this idea, and like, you know what would be funny? If we, like, all the food came to life, and hot dog going into a bun, sex jokes.
I really like your Seth Rogen laugh.
Yeah, it's not that far off.
It's pretty good.
And then they went, okay, we've got 20 minutes here. How do we pull this into an hour and 20 minutes? I know, let's make it an allegory about religion. And then we can throw some ham-fisted things about, like, really big issues in the world. And then at the end, everyone will just like cut everything up and kill everyone, and it'll be fucking hilarious. And then they've made it into an animated film. And I think the sex jokes are quite childish, and they're just not that funny after a point. The violence is probably the funniest stuff in it, like you say, particularly the violence against humans. And I quite like the bit about the guy doing bath salts, so they'd actually be able to see everything for the sea of the food being
I thought that
alive.
was quite funny. I think anything human related was actually quite funny.
Yeah, that was the stuff that worked. But it was just the same jokes over and over again, not done particularly well. Nick Kroll was very funny as the douche, but very gross, but well, that's kind of expected. Like anyone who's seen Big Mouth, yeah, okay, it's going to go that way. But he was probably the best voice acting in it. I think everyone else was there, like
they were doing what they do.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think it worked. Also, the animation is ugly as fuck.
It's really quite gross to look at.
It's quite low budget anyway. So like fair enough. And it seemed like everyone was like worked to the bone on it. So I feel bad to have a go at the animators. But oh my God, it was awful. It was so ugly. Such bad CGI. Really bland. The backgrounds were terrible. To the extent where some of the visual jokes I don't think even worked as well as they wanted them to.
One of the humans, her chin is so pointed that it's really quite distracting. This,
yeah, the James Franco, the kind of main human that's in it, really ugly, like really badly animated, and yeah, but all the characters, the buns, and even just like going on, like the graphics and the writing of the like say ketchup and things was so badly done. I really, so yeah, there's not much for me to like in this movie. I don't think it's that funny. I think it's really ugly. I think it's maybe a funny concept that runs out of steam after 20 minutes, and when it thinks it's trying to be actually smart, it's not very smart. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a film I'd really like to like. I like pretty much all the crew that are involved, like the Seth Rogen kind of Judd Apatow crew, and stuff. But yeah, I just don't think it works on any level.
No, it really doesn't. Do you remember that Ricky Gervais film, The Invention of Lying?
Yeah,
where it's similar. It's a gag idea, and then it becomes a film about atheism. Surprise, surprise, from Ricky Gervais, and it's similarly sort of like a similar thing to that. I started thinking about, and you don't want to remind me of Ricky Gervais if you want me to like your film, at least post 2006 or so. And I started thinking about that film, The Invention of Lying, and it just got me thinking, it never works, this. Like, it doesn't matter what side of the religious kind of spectrum, atheist or religious or wherever, it never works. Whenever writers try to do their big finger-wagging tell-off-a-thon about this side or that side, it's just preachy. And even at the end, when one of the characters says, "No, don't be so preachy. That's why no one's listening to you," it still comes across as preachy. And yeah, it's just no, you're right. There is very little to like. I know that it's trying to be kind of not PC and everything like that, but actors doing accents of other races started to get a bit uncomfortable.
Was very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, is Edward Norton Jewish?" And Googled it, and I was like, "No."
And ironically, David Krumholtz, who plays the Middle Eastern character, is Jewish.
Yeah, I feel like
but not Middle Eastern.
I kind of feel like you need to get people in on the gag.
Yes,
if you're doing that. So I feel like if you actually got Woody Allen pre all the problems to do that voice, or if you got some,
like
if
a
you got
Zach
people,
Braff or someone like that, maybe.
But like when you've got someone else, I just don't. I feel like they're not in on. I think you can do that kind of thing, but you have to have someone who. You have to do because obviously Seth Rogen's Jewish, and obviously has quite strong opinions on Israel. For anyone who heard his kind of when he did the American Pickle. Marketing tour, he said some quite strong things about Israel. And yeah, fair enough. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, and I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of what he says. But I kind of feel like to then pick a Christian or put somebody who's got a Christian background to then do a really hokey Jewish voice,
a really bad Woody Allen impression,
and kind of really undermines
and then jokes
point.
About the Middle Eastern falafel going to heaven. To the
77 extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's all a very, and then have that person played by a Jewish actor.
Yes,
I think that's that's doesn't work for me. is another thing. I think that's one of the things you can do allegories, but I think they have to be very. I think they have to be a lot more abstract. I think that's when like something like Zootopia, or I've just watched Elemental as well. Something like Elemental, they're quite abstract. They're allegories comparatively. I mean, they're still there. They're still hitting you over the head a bit, but they're fairly abstract. But I think when you do it that on the nose, you've either got to go in and do it properly and actually like really make a point, or you. Yeah, I just think they kind of did this thing. So then, and again, not to give too much away, but they can have a kind of a joke at the end that's very at expense of religion as a whole. I would say because most religion is not great for LGBT plus people. Let's be honest, Q plus, sorry. And so they did this thing at the start that's very ham-fisted to kind of get to a point where they can do something about that. And again, I think you've got to dot the I's and cross the T's if you're going to do that kind of stuff, and I think they very much haven't. So I think that also doesn't sit that well with me. And again, I think that partially, I think you wouldn't do that now. I think if they were making this movie now, they probably would think about these things more.
I think
At the time, they were like, someone's given me $17 million to make a gross-up movie. I'm going to make a couple of ham-fisted points.
Seth Rogen is... If there's someone who's a poster child for someone who maybe was quite problematic early on, not in sort of doing anything terrible, but sort of his taste in humor.
Yeah.
And then over the years has kind of done nothing but progress.
I feel like as we all do as humans,
we all
like
do.
If we looked at what we talked about when we were 18,
yeah,
we'd
well,
probably
quite.
be like,
And he certainly doesn't stick his head in the sand, nor does he dig his heels in. He's very much a person who flows with what's going on in the world. And I really respect Seth Rogen. He's one of my favourite people in Hollywood. And I think
he comes across as a real good guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if nothing else, this just shows how far he's come. I mean,
I think how far, to an extent, we've all come. Like, if I think if someone else put this out now, it would almost seem quite right wing. Like it would almost be right wing people would write this. Whereas I think at the time it was almost seen as progressive, which just shows how people have changed from their opinion. I think it's why someone like Ricky Gervais has gone very out of vogue very quickly. Because like 7 or 8 years ago, what he was saying, people were like, yeah. And now people are like, actually, is that just not a different way of being, what's the word? Yeah, being prejudicial? Like, actually, are you not just being prejudicial to Christians or what? You know, I think that is, you know, that how things have changed. I think part of everything that's happened with Me Too and, you know, LGBTQ plus rights is actually as a whole, I think people are doing a better job of, or not everyone, but a lot of people are doing a better job of putting themselves in other people's shoes and thinking about how other people would feel in that scenario. And I think at that point, it was more like, fuck this thing. You know, I think things have got a bit more well-rounded.
Yeah, and that's the thing, nihilism at one point was very in vogue for cool people, being cynical and nihilistic and just saying fuck everything. And now we're more empathetic.
But I think what people maybe have realised is by just being nihilistic, you end up with Donald Trump and you end up with Boris Johnson and you know,
yes, very much
Marie Le Pen or whatever, where actually people actually need to start giving a shit about things and thinking about other people and maybe compromising a bit and coming together and moving the world forward. You know, we've got some big things we've got to sort out, like global warming and stuff, and just being like a cunt to people doesn't really
it doesn't solve anything.
Solve things,
yeah, exactly.
As what's going on in the Middle East shows at the minute.
Well, yes, exactly. I think we've saved the world.
I think we have.
We've put the world to rights.
Yeah, and well. Quite, you know, the very important podcast. How we've gone from a movie about a hot dog fucking a bun to saving the world. So that's the kind of thing that happens on this podcast.
It's at this point where Rob will put in a round of applause.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, wink, wink. Put in a round of applause here, right now.
Anyway, so yeah, I think we've both decided we didn't really like that movie that much.
I think so. I
did like it. I think I watched it maybe 2 or 3 years after it came out. I probably watched it on a plane.
I've only seen it twice, and I've probably seen it about 2 or 3 years after it came out too.
And I wasn't that fussed with it at the time, so...
Yeah, I remember thinking it was a bit nothing then, but I actively disliked it
this time.
Now.
I think I thought, yeah. And I think, again, it's that spectrum of how we've come a long way in 8 years.
Yes, very much so.
Excellent. I think that probably brings us to the
Wraps
end
are all up
of these movies. So, Callum, TMNT, Mutant, Mayhem.
That's right. I'm between 2 scores. I think I'm between 7 and 8, but I'm leaning towards 8 just because I liked it so much. It's funny, it's slick, it's very charming with the animation and the voice acting. It's just a good fun time in the cinema. If you have like a 10-year-old who's sort of at that point when they're still like kiddie stuff, but they're also kind of into picking their nose and thinking farts are funny, this will hit. That will be the sweet spot. And then for the 30-year-olds who never stopped thinking farts are funny and also going, is that Run DMC in the soundtrack? Is that a reference to NWA? I think they'll love it too. So it's a crowd pleaser. It's well-rounded, 8 out of 10.
It's interesting. It's an easy 8 for me. I almost consider giving it a 9, but I think there is too much basic humour, and I do think that it has basically a whole point that doesn't need to be there, and I've got a problem with the ending. So I think that's why it's an 8. But otherwise, I like the soundtrack, I like the visuals, I like the story, I like the voice acting. You know, it's not a lot I didn't like. It just there's a few areas it could have just been made perfect. So yeah. And Sausage Party.
ugly. It's not nearly as progressive as it thinks it is. It's got some all right voice acting, especially I think Nick Kroll is the star of the show. As you say, he's a good villain.
He's always a good voice actor. Anyway. He's always just fun.
He's good fun. But it's just too ugly and kind of with its chest puffed out, thinking that it's solving the big issues. It's just not funny, I think, and laughing twice is way not enough for a comedy. I think 5 or 6 is the limit for it to be considered a proper comedy, so I'm gonna give it a 3. It's just not good.
I agree with everything you said. I just didn't enjoy watching it. It's a weird one. I didn't like actively. It wasn't something like Blonde, where I was like actively, my blood was boiling while I was watching it. But there was a lot of stuff that just sat really uncomfortably with me, and I just didn't find it funny, and it's ugly. And the best thing about it is it's short.
Yes, very much so. It's an hour and 20 minutes. So
I didn't hate it, so it's not a 1, but there's not much to like about it, so it's a 2 for me.
Okay.
So yeah, that means we've both agreed 8 out of 10 on TMNT Mutant Mayhem. I wasn't saying madness every time.
I know.
And it's a 2.5.
Yes.
I think we make it for Sausage Party. So I think that's very much a don't watch. It's one of our lowest scores for a while, actually.
For a long time. We've been having a lot of 7s and 8s.
Yeah.
A few 6s
and 5s and stuff. But we haven't watched anything that we've been like actively like, I
guess because of this, how we orchestrate this, we kind of go, oh, we could watch that film. I really like that film. So we do tend to quite like everything.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and you can comment on our socials what you think. Like, it's quite good having a film that we don't enjoy.
Yes,
like because we bicker about it, or even better, one that one of us really likes and one that one of us hates.
Like a Hackers, although that was more mild.
Yeah, but more like a Speed Racer.
Yes,
but the issue with that is then it means one of us has to watch a film, or both of us have to watch a film that we really don't enjoy.
I know. Because we do this in our spare time, it does become a bit of a
chore.
Should we not? Although I'm trying to get back into watching movies properly, because this Halloween try to watch at least 2 or 3 horror movies per week, and I've been realizing that unless it's podcast time, I tend to look at my phone quite a lot. So it's like the challenge is you're not allowed to, even if you hate the movie, you're not allowed. You can pause it to go make a cup of tea or something, but you can't look at your phone.
Well, I wish I had that much time to watch movies. There seems to be the time that I have the most time to watch movies is on aeroplanes. So I can just about squeeze 2 in a week at the minute. But no, it's an interesting one. I think it's where it works best is where there's a new movie that comes out. Like Pinocchio is a really good example.
Yeah,
there was a real period of stinkers going on streamers last year as well. We ended up watching quite a few of them, and ones that weren't always necessarily meant to be stinkers.
Yeah, so we just kind of watched it open-minded, I guess, not knowing about the score or anything like that.
So yeah, anyway.
Oh, that's twice.
Twice in an episode. That's bringing back the classic. But yeah, anyway. Tell us what you think.
We'd be interested to know.
Do more? Should we argue more? Should we agree more? What do you think?
Yeah, what do you want?
Anyway, thanks very much, guys, for listening.
Thank you.
We will probably squeeze in one maybe Halloween episode before we go off to the other side of the world, and then there'll be some interesting content coming out, hopefully. One thing which I think will be very funny, maybe video wise, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks very much, guys, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Turtle power.